Dude, there's no way that this is making me any faster. But what if I told you that running slow is actually the secret to running faster, building endurance and avoiding injuries? Yeah, it sounds a bit crazy, but there's some science to it. This is the Maffetone Method, and if you do it right, it'll change your running forever. So the Maffetone Method is all about building a strong aerobic base by focusing on training at low intensity, helping you develop endurance while avoiding overtraining and burnout. After 5 years of using this method, I think I've learned a little bit about it. And I'm going to talk to you also about some of the issues that I think that the Maffetone has for a older runner. Not everybody is going to love this, and not everybody is going to benefit from this. Just saying that right off the hop. So if you want to know more, keep on watching because we're going to dive into all kinds of stuff. So low intensity training is the idea that you're training at a pace that keeps you in your zone, which often means running slower than you're used to. Now this can feel very frustrating at first, but it leads to long-term gains by developing your aerobic system without causing excessive stress or muscle fatigue. Now you're going to see gradual progression on this. Over time, your goal is to run faster at the same heart rate. And it's about being patient as you're aiming to improve your aerobic capacity, not just your speed. The method also encourages cross-training, strength training, and plenty of rest to avoid overuse, injuries, and burnout. So strength training complements this extremely well because it helps build your muscles needed to run those longer distances. Again, it's all about building a strong aerobic base so that way your endurance can improve. Now, there is also a diet component, and the Maffetone Method emphasizes a balanced whole food diet, particularly one that supports fat burning. Yeah, I'm burning my own fat right now, baby. Yeah. Woo, woo. This means focusing on healthy fats and proteins while eliminating sugar and processed foods. That can be hard for a lot of people, I know. If you're a runner like me, who doesn't like a little bit of sweets? But you got to keep those at bay and keep the snacks at bay. Just don't go there. Now, since you're aiming for a faster pace and a better endurance, using the Maffetone Method will help you improve your aerobic system while being kind to your body. And I say that with 5 years of knowledge, because the key is to trust the process and let your aerobic fitness develop at its own pace. It takes time, and it doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to see results after a week or two. You may actually regress, but it's part of the process. Now, I wanted to share with you what my results looked like. So if you stick with this method for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and you keep working your way through, you're going to reach a point where you're going to go, okay, I've built up a good base. I'm happy. The weight has come off. I'm running faster than I ever have at the same heart rate. So now you want to adapt, right? You want to start pushing more, which is fantastic. You can do that. This is where 20% of your runs become faster. So you start doing tempo runs, which is basically threshold run. Okay, maybe you start adding in some crazy anaerobic workouts, like maybe 400 meter repeats, maybe 200, maybe 100, maybe 800 meters, right? If that's your gig, if that's what you want to do, if you want to have that, then go for it. But if you just want to stick to, let's say, maybe one faster run during the week, while all your rest of your runs are slow, then yeah, go ahead and do that. But make sure you're consistent. You've got the long run in there, as well as a tempo run, okay? And then the rest can be slow, and again, just depends. You want to make sure you have, some hour runs in, but then you also want to have a couple of hour and a half runs in, right? Maybe you've added in, a 2-hour long run on the weekend. Right? Heart rate, 133. Baby, that was beautiful. 3 hours and, 22 minutes or something like that, right? These are fantastic ways of building your base. And this is what I did when I first started using this method. So if I look at some of my results what did it look like? It started off low, but I slowly worked my way all the way up. And some of these points, I hit a point where I was improving so much, but then something happened in life and then it just went down again, right? And then something happened again in life that allowed me to get back into training, and then things started to go back up again. So the more that I was able to train, the better the results were. But then over time, you can see how many hours that I ran, what kind of distance I was running. You can see where my VO2 max went. Like I started off like, 32, I think, and worked my way all the way up to 40 just by running slow. There was no intensity, right? But then when I added intensity, I had to reduce the volume, but then things went down, but then they went kind of back up again. So it was kind of an interesting mix of adding in a little bit of speed work later on. So when I did this, I looked at my training, I had the time to do it. But then as the process continued and I saw these ups and downs, I just kind of went with it. I didn't stress out about it. I knew my body, I felt strong. And when I went to run my ultra marathon, I could see I wasn't at the peak performance like I was in June, where I was really doing well. It was probably the best I've ever been, but I was doing a lot of hill work, like a lot of hiking, a lot of trail running. I was on the trails like almost every day. It was insane what I was able to achieve, but I built up a good base. But then work got busy and it started to slowly drop off again. But then I built it up. So even though you take time away, you still got a base to come back to. That's the important thing about having one. Because right now, I'm on this rebuild to come back stronger. Yeah, I may be running absolutely the slowest I've ever run in my life. Running in snow is probably one of the hardest things I ever do when I do my running. It's like running on a beach in sand, barefoot. It's just so hard. But I love it. But I don't care. I know I'm going to get better as I go. Yeah, the weather, it's not great to run on snow. My back hurt the other day because I ran 10K, and it's the first time I've run 10K on crazy snow. Like, it wasn't balanced. It was awful. It wasn't a good thing to run on, and I felt it at the end of my run. At about 8 kilometers, I was like, it's a good thing I'm on my way home because my back's a little sore. It's just the uneven ground that I was on, right? My proprioception was all over the place, and that was a result of it. So that's okay. I took like 2 days off, nice recovery, and I'll be back at it tomorrow. It's not a big deal. But these are things that happen. Now, on my when I did my MAF test, when I started off, my results, they can vary from day to day. So I just brought up these two as to give you an example, right? So this one in September, I was, I think, started off at 834, right? With a heart rate of 130, 137. And then by, I think it was October, I did the same thing again. Again, weather was different from when I did it the last time. So not everything is going to be perfect when you do these, but when I did, it turned out that I was able to run it in this particular one in like 5 minutes and 48 seconds, right? So the improvement was there with, I think the heart rate was 139. But again, you're never going to get a perfect result. Whether you're using this, whether you're using a chest strap, or you've got your monitor on your arm. I find the one on your arm the most accurate, then a chest strap, and then your watch. That's how I've found which one works best for me. But you can lose it. If you don't keep it up, you will lose it. You will gain weight. It's just inevitable. Because when one pillar falls, they all fall. It's a sad truth. If you don't use something, you're going to lose it. And cars were not meant to sit in a driveway. Airplanes were not meant to sit on the tarmac at an airport for long periods of time. They're meant to fly. Cars are meant to drive. It's just the way it is. Our bodies are meant to move. We're all about movement. if we don't move, we rust. Our body, we gain weight, our limbs become calcified, it's not good. So you always want to be moving, whether you're moving backwards or whether you're moving forwards. You want to be moving, because the alternative is not a good place to be. And it's not a place that I like to be. Now, to lose the weight and to deal with endurance and to push forward, to go further, I find that the Maffetone method is fantastic for that. Whether you call it Zone 2, whether you call it the Maffetone method, whether you call it Kavar, like whatever you want to call it, right? Figure out what works for you and apply it. I use different methods all the time, right? I've Zone 2, I've used Kavarvan, right? Your heart rate reserve, your maximum, your minimum heart rate. I've used that to run on the trails. I've used the Maffetone method to train my aerobic base. Look, whether it's 180 minus your age and you leave it at that, try that. If that works for you, don't worry about taking off the 5 beats if you're overweight and 10 beats if you're on medication. Look, we're all different. We all have to figure it out. Yes, there are reasons why you want to take those numbers off of your math number when you put it together. But these age-related equations, they do work. But what if I took 190 minus my age and I ran at that? Would I improve? Of course. You're always going to improve if you're doing something consistently. Yeah, if you're consistently running fast all the time, yeah, you'll consistently run fast and you'll probably do well, and you'll probably consistently get injured. Maybe not. Maybe your body is different than somebody else's. But this is what I love about running, because it's an individual journey. Not everybody can handle high intensity. Not everybody can handle low intensity, huge volume, right? We're all different in what we do and what we believe. And I'm always willing to try something new and figure it out. This is how I would shuffle my way to getting faster, okay? Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. Just shuffle along, shuffle along, shuffle along. Keep it simple. Take a lot of steps, short, like your pace is slow. And that's how I shuffled for a while. But over time, obviously, I got faster and my form changed for the better. The way you run and the way I run, you're going to be totally different. Anybody starting out, buy the big yellow book. But when I figure something out, I want to tell people about it, which is why I make these videos. The science behind the Maffetone method is rooted in understanding the body's energy systems and how they respond to different types of training. So here's a breakdown of key scientific concepts. Number 1, aerobic versus anaerobic energy systems. So your aerobic system is when you run at a lower intensity, below your lactate threshold. Your body primarily uses fat as a fuel source, which is a slow but more sustainable form of energy. This is where the Maffetone method focuses on teaching the body to become more efficient at using fat for fuel rather than relying on carbohydrates, glycogen, okay, which can get depleted more quickly when you're running. Now, the anaerobic energy system is the intensity of the exercise, and as it increases, your body switches to using more carbohydrates and starts producing lactate acid, which contributes to fatigue. You know, the feeling that the legs are getting tired? That's what I'm talking about. And the Maffetone method aims to keep you in the aerobic zone to avoid this transition, allowing you to run for a longer duration without hitting that fatigue button. Now, heart rate as a marker for aerobic development, the 180 formula, the core of the Maffetone method is 180 minus your age. That's the calculation that I talked about before. And this gives you a target heart rate zone that's considered optimal for aerobic training. And the theory behind it is staying within this heart rate zone allows you to avoid the anaerobic work and focus on improving your aerobic system. Now, research has shown that training below the lactate threshold, your aerobic zone, leads to improvements in VO2 max, right? The maximum oxygen uptake that you can have, and fat utilization and overall endurance. The Maffetone method indirectly helps raise your lactate threshold, which is the point of where your body starts to produce lactate faster than it can clear it. By improving this threshold, you can sustain higher intensities for longer periods of time before hitting the fatigue button. Low intensity training increases the body's ability to burn fat as fuel. As you stay within your MAF zone, the body adapts to burning more fat efficiently, which is more sustainable for long distance events like marathons or ultra marathons, even half marathons. By training at low intensities, you also spare your glycogen stores, preventing them from depleting too quickly. And this is important for endurance athletes as glycogen is limited and the body will switch to fat burning after it runs out. If anyone knows what it's like hitting the wall after a marathon or even a half marathon and you just run out and all of a sudden you can't run anymore, that's what happens. You just bonk. You can't do anything. So once you get your body trained to be able to switch between fat and glycogen, fat and sugar, then you're going to be in a good position to be able to go those longer distances. You're going to get some physiological adaptations, and mitochondria density is one of those things. So long duration aerobic training leads to an increase in the number and size of the mitochondria, and these are the powerhouses of your cells. More mitochondria help your muscles use oxygen more efficiently, allowing you to run longer without fatiguing. Now you also have capillary development, and that's low intensity training increases the number of capillaries in your muscles, improving the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the muscle tissue, further enhancing endurance. Now, there's also a hormonal response to this, and the Maffetone method encourages training in a way that minimizes the release of stress hormones like cortisol, which can break down muscle tissue and impair recovery. And this approach helps balance out stress and recovery for better long-term results. Now, 5 is recovery and avoiding overtraining. Look, the Maffetone method stresses the importance of recovery and overtraining, specifically at high intensity. And this can lead to burnout, injuries, and weakening your immune system. Now, the method's low intensity approach allows athletes to accumulate more volume without overstressing the body, leading to fewer injuries and a more gradual, sustainable improvement in performance. Now, the role of strength training, which I'm already doing, complements the aerobic development by improving muscle endurance, balance, stability, and studies have shown that combining strength training with aerobic training can enhance running economy and reduce the risk of injury, improve muscle function, and joint integrity. Strength training also aims at maintaining lean muscle mass while reducing fat, which aligns well with the Maffetone method's goal of building fat burning, injury-free aerobic system. There are some key elements of training using heart rate. The primary goal is you want to keep your heart rate within the MAF heart rate target zone. So if you take 180 minus your age, so for example, 180 minus 46 gives you 134. If you are in that zone, 134 to 124, you want to keep it in that aerobic zone. Now, it can shift, it can change, depending on if you're on medication. If you're over fat, you have to reduce either 10 beats or 5 beats. There's a number of those things that you want to consider. This system is developed for you as a runner, for you to figure out what works best for you. Everybody is going to be different. Some people are going to love this method. Some people are going to hate this method. And then there's the in-between, okay? So what I say, take it with a grain of salt. It's worked for me. So you're going to monitor each session to ensure that you're staying in the right zone for your aerobic development. Now, low intensity running, okay, that's going to be your main runs. So most of your running will be at an easy pace where you can hold that conversation without getting out of breath. In the beginning, this might mean running slower than you're used to, but it's crucial that you want to stay in that zone that we talked about. That's your MAF zone. Now, we have to talk about the duration, because the length of these runs can vary depending on your fitness level. Like typically, you're going to aim for 45 to 90 minutes per session, okay? But over time, you'll gradually increase the length of these runs as you build your endurance. Now, you're going to see progressive adaptation on this, right? So improvement over time as you continue training in your MAF zone, your pace at a given heart rate will improve. And this means, honestly, that you'll gradually be able to run faster while staying at the same low heart rate zone. It's a gradual process. So consistency is the key here. Now, we also have to talk about cross training. So incorporating other forms of low intensity aerobic exercise like cycling, swimming, hiking, just regular walking, right? It will help the burnout and the overuse injuries. And this allows you to build an aerobic capacity without adding the excessive strain on the same muscle groups, right? Cross training can improve your endurance and increase your overall aerobic fitness. Like strength training I've talked about in the past, but if you can get in there 2 to 3 times a week, that would be great because strength training is a key part of the Maffetone method to be able to build muscle and improve your running form. Look, I'm already incorporating this, which is great. And so when I focus on the functional strength, the core stability, the lower body strength to support my running, everything starts to change. And my rest and recovery, it's adequate. It's crucial in the Maffetone method because, look, you at least want to have 1 full rest day per week, just 1. But again, if you're new to this, you may need more. But allow your body to recover and repair, and it helps prevent injury and allows you to continue building your aerobic capacity without burning out and getting injured. Now, I have some important notes, okay? And now during the adaptation period, so early on in your training, you might find yourself running slower than usual to stay within your MAF heart rate zone. Look, this is normal, and over time, you'll see pace improvements at the same heart rate. Just got to stick with it. The other thing you're going to see is heart rate drift. So as you run for longer periods, your heart rate may naturally drift higher. It's normal, even though you're not increasing your effort. If this happens, slow down, take short walk breaks, and get back within your MAF zone, okay? It's part of the adaptation process, and you will be able to see improvements the longer you do this. You'll be able to go further, and the heart rate's not going to spike until like later on, and it'll always get pushed down further down the road. Okay, heart rate drift is a real thing, specifically if it's hot outside. Now, weekly mileage, as you progress, you can increase your weekly mileage by gradually adding more intensity runs or, increasing the duration of your long runs. These are things that you can kind of figure out, right? You got to listen to your body. Sure, they talk about like the 10% rule, but just pay attention, listen to what your body's telling you, giving you giving you all the cues. And after like every 4 weeks, you may have like a down week where you cut back the mileage a little bit, okay? Just for like 1 week and then go back up again. Because again, even though you're running slow, doesn't mean your body is like ready to rear go every single day. It needs time, right? It needs time to adapt, it needs time to repair, and your body is going to be different from one runner to another. So regardless of what I say, you have to figure out what works for you. And if you don't like this method, don't do it. If you want to add something else into it, go ahead, do it. I'm just speaking from my personal results, my personal beliefs. So does it sound like a plan? Do you want to try this whole Maffetone thing? Look, it's pretty chill in terms of intensity, but it does require patience and consistency over time. Over time, you'll see your endurance and pace improve, in a sustainable way. You just don't want to go in the injury box, man, because that sucks. If you've been a runner for quite a while, like let's say probably 8 years, you've run a couple of marathons, maybe a couple of half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, and you're not new to the sport, then the Maffetone method may not be the right method to use for you because you've been a runner for a while and maybe you've got a pretty good base. Not to say that you're not going to run your slow runs slow, but maybe you're going to be faster than what the Maffetone method basically tells you to run at. But if you're an intermediate runner, if you're a beginner runner, if you're coming back off an injury, or you've been away from the sport for a while, that's probably going to be where you find that the Maffetone method could work for you. But for some in their 50s and above, and you've been a runner for a while, it may not just cut it anymore. You may already know what your threshold pace is. You may know what all your heart rate zones are. You may have been to a lab and been tested to figure out what your VO2 max is. So you may not need this method. But just because you don't need it doesn't mean somebody else doesn't. So I'm going to give you, for 3 different runners, I'm going to give you like a plan of what I've used. So depending on the type of runner you are, your MAF training can be very different. So if you're a beginner runner who has no real running history and is like 50 pounds overweight, you want to build your aerobic base. You want to improve your cardiovascular health, and you gradually want to lose the weight. So you can focus on start slowly to avoid the injury and prioritize consistency and stay within that target heart rate zone. So there's a training plan here that you can take a look at and see if it works for you. Okay. Again, everybody is going to be very different. So this method may not work for everybody, but I certainly want to try it. Now, if you've got weight to lose, just know it's going to be harder. Okay. It's going to be very hard. You may spend most of your time walking and you may hate it. And you're like, I just want to be a runner. Why can't I just run? Well, sure you can, but there's going to be a lot of stress on your joints with all of that extra weight, specifically if you haven't built up to a certain point, right? I mean, if you haven't done squats, lunges, push-ups, core, all those types of things to work on, all the glute muscles, you may have a hard time taking up running and not be sore the next day. So again, the way you train is going to be different based on everyone's fitness level and history and backstory when it comes to running and their fitness journey. So if you're an experienced runner and you've been running for a number of years and maybe you're doing 20 miles a week, maybe 30 miles a week, but you've picked up injuries, maybe you haven't built a solid aerobic base yet and you want to reduce those injury risks, this may be the right one for you, right? You can build your aerobic base without increasing the intensity while focusing on those low intensity runs and strength training. You can support your body in injury prevention. Again, like the new runner, this may be something that you want to take a look at and adapt it for what your fitness levels are at. But, if you're getting back into the sport and you just don't want to be injured, or you're been running for a while and you're prone to injuries and you haven't really seen results and you're burning out, I mean, this could be things that you're doing to help. Now, if you're an experienced runner, look, you may think you already know everything, and that's cool. But I'm just going to talk, like if you're running 30 miles per week, maybe 35, and your goal is to rebuild your aerobic base and recover from burnout and restore the motivation, you can certainly use the Maffetone method for this, right? So you can focus on low intensity training and recovery, incorporate cross training and strength work to prevent further burnout and injury. I'm not a coach. I'm a runner, just like you. And I'm just sharing what I've done in the past. I've done different experiments from 1 week to 2 months out to a year. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've tried different things based on the things that are going on in my life. Sometimes things are very stressful, so I just have to really curtail all the running down a lot. But again, everybody is going to be different on their journey. So in this portion of the video, if we want to summarize beginners, look, start with low intensity aerobic runs and cross training and build up gradually to avoid the injury. Intermediate runners, they could build a strong aerobic base by increasing their volume and frequency while focusing on strength to avoid injury prevention. And experienced runners, maybe you've burned out a lot, maybe emphasize on recovery, low intensity running and cross training to restore the motivation and reduce the burnout. These are just example plans that allow each runner to progress safely in their own sustainable way, focusing on this low intensity aerobic development while balancing out strength and recovery. I get asked a lot, how long does it take to see improvements? The time it takes to see improvements with the Maffetone method varies, And it depends on your starting point, your consistency, your individual factors. But here's a general timeline for each stage, I guess. Initial adaptation, I'd say probably 4 weeks, okay? And what can you expect in the first few weeks? You'll primarily be adapting to running at a low intensity. That's pretty simple, right? But this can be a bit of frustration for some, as you may feel like you're slower than you've ever been. And if you're used to running faster, this may be very frustrating, right? So your body is going to adapt to burning fat for more fuel efficiency and improving your cardiovascular system. And one of the key things to focus on is consistency. Your pace at the same heart rate might still be slower, but that's normal at this stage. Early development, probably 4 to 8 weeks. And what can you expect? Probably by the end of the second month, you'll likely see some noticeable improvements. I know I did in my endurance. Your heart rate may remain low for the same pace, and you may feel more comfortable running for longer durations, I guess you could say. You may also start noticing slight increases in speed at your MAF heart rate. Although this improvement may be very gradual, but if you've been strength training as well, you'll likely feel stronger and more stable during those runs. So the things to focus on is just continue running in your MAF zone. Don't rush the progress. Gradual improvements in aerobic efficiency will start showing. Building a solid base, right? 2 to 4 months, right? What could a runner expect if you're doing that? And you should start to see more noticeable improvements, right? Your pace at your MAF heart rate will likely be faster than when you first started, significantly. For some, this could mean being able to run faster while maintaining the same low heart rate, which is a given, which is exactly what you want to be doing. At some point, your aerobic system is becoming more efficient and your body is using fat as a fuel more efficiently and improving your endurance. You're getting to run further and further out. And you'll probably begin to feel more comfortable running those longer distances at the same intensity. And then continued progress after 4 to 6 months and beyond. What can you expect? Again, consistent training at MAF. You'll see your aerobic base become really solid and you'll see more stability in your runs. Even if you take like a couple of days off, you'll still be there, okay? This is where you really start to notice the benefits, right? You may start to simulate maybe some races, right? Maybe you want to try 5K, 10K. Maybe you want to do a half marathon if you're up to that level. Try it out and see what happens, right? See what goes on. Because I'll tell you, when I did and I started doing this, things really, it took like main focus and, I saw some really cool results with regards to that. So yeah, you do start to see some great results the further you do this. Now, if you want to speed up the process, what's the best way? Consistency. You got to stick with the method, avoid pushing too hard, right? The Maffetone method is about gradually and steadily improving to be able to see the progress you want. Strength training, continue incorporating strength training specifically for legs and core to improve your running efficiency. And recovery, give your body the proper rest to avoid overtraining, which can slow you down during your progress. You don't want to go back to the beginning after you've built up a lot of great progress. So the $1 million question is, do I believe that the Maffetone method is very powerful? 100%. I absolutely do. And I think it would work for a lot of people if they gave it the amount of time that it needs for you to be able to see the results. But most runners don't want to stick with it because they've got a race to run, they're impatient, and they just want to see results fast. But that's not what this is for. And everyone always thinks that there's another way that's better, right? There's also the notion of perceived effort. Like, what is perceived effort is going to be different from one runner to another. And if you haven't really run a whole lot, what's your definition of perceived? Like, what is that? Because I could be running and going, yeah, I'm running fine, like this is not a big deal for me. I can do this. How do I know that my perceived effort is the right thing that I'm running at? Because most times people are huffing and puffing and it's just too much on them and they can't talk, they can't have a conversation, but they still think that's their perceived effort. That's the only challenge that I see when it comes to this. Not that it's bad, I just think most runners kind of miscalculate what their perceived effort is. And I may be in that same boat. So the Maffetone method kind of helps you figure out what a low intensity run feels like, and then maybe you can adapt it from there if you want to pursue more of a perceived effort. But maybe start with the Maffetone method first, and then try making some changes on your own to see what happens. Anyways, that's perceived effort, the way I think of it. This video right here on your screen, I think it will probably help you if you're using the Maffetone method and you want to be able to run. If you want to run and not walk, try this video right here. Until next time, get out and run.